Okay, we're transitioning into our lesson. Go ahead and go to Google Classroom. Go ahead and go into Google Classroom. You will see a PowerPoint that is titled Stonewall Jackson. Go ahead and click on that and pull it up. So what we see on the board, you're going to see on your Chromebook. This is just to kind of help you follow along. Make sure that you're on what you're supposed to be while we are learning. And let's remember our social contract. What's one of the big words that I talk about on our social contract, Don? Respectful. We're talking about respect. So when we're being respectful, what does it look like, Gracie? What does respect look like? Listening. Being kind to others. And so while we're learning, we need to make sure we have those listening ears. We're participating and we're learning, right? Yes. So today we're going to look at our standard, and it says explain the causes, major events, and consequences of the Civil War. Describe the roles of Abraham Lincoln, Robert E. Lee, Ulysses Grant, Jefferson Davis, Thomas Stonewall Jackson, and William T. Sherman. Now we've talked about Lincoln, we've talked about Lee. Who else have we talked about? Sherman and Grant. Today we're going to focus on Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Alright, now we have our I can statement. I can describe the role of Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Now, we talk about this every time we have a lesson, right? Y'all see that can word? What is it telling us? Okay, I heard one person. We can do it. So it might be a little hard at first because anytime you're exposed or you're learning something new, it can be a little tough, right? I still struggle too. But we keep pushing through, we keep trying our best because we can all learn, right, Kyrie? Right. Now, on your desk, you will see what is called a note taker. And it looks like this. You'll see a picture of somebody we're talking about today. Does everybody have this? It should already be on your table. Make sure your name is on it. This is what you're going to use to take notes today. You can use the highlighter to highlight words. You can use your pencil to write in the words. If you have a question while we're going over the information, write a question mark beside it, okay? Write a question mark so that way we can go back and we can talk about it a little more. Does anybody have any questions about the note taker? We've used these before, right? So y'all familiar with how to do it? Right? Okay. So now we're going to talk about what we already know. So what is the Civil War? Don't look at the board. What is the Civil War? Go ahead, Jarquez. Very good. Now, can you put that in your own words for me? Can you tell me what it is? Right, so you had this battle between the north part of the United States and the south part of the United States because they had differences, right? And Darkway's made a very good point. That's where we're going into the slavery and how the South wanted to be able to have slaves to work on the plantations. Y'all remember that big word, plantations? What was a plantation, Michaela? Okay, think about farms. When we talked about how the South had a bunch of land and they had animals and crops. They did have cotton on the plantation, so they had a large amount of property with a large amount of crops, and they usually had big houses, right? All right, so what is the Union? What's the Union?
Islands in the north, Allied northern part of the United States that fought in the Civil War.
Okay, I like how you said that, but I want you to put it in your own words for me. But let's stop there and let's break down that word allies. Everybody see that on the PowerPoint on our Chromebooks? What is an ally? Colby, what's an ally?
Basically a friend and your ally.
Right, so an ally is just another word for friendly or another word for a friend, right? So can you put that in your own words, Kaylee?
Basically, the northern is basically the Union, and the Union didn't want slaves.
Very good. So when you hear the word union, a way that I remember, and I shared this in our small groups before, another way that I remember union is the first two letters are U-N, so up north. So when you hear union and you look at the first two letters, up north. Everybody do it. Up north.
Up north.
Union.
Union.
Oh, y'all gotta try it again. Y'all gotta be loud. Union.
Union.
Up north.
Up north.
I don't see fingers. Let's do it one more time. Union.
Union.
Up north.
Up north.
There you go. Very good. We're gonna get some dojo points. Now, when we're looking at Confederates, who wants to share what Confederate is? Somebody I hadn't heard from yet. Christian, sorry.
The south part of the United States.
Right, so the Confederate is the southern part of the United States that fought in the Civil War. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to talk about Thomas Jackson. Make sure you're on the right slide, guys. And a reminder, you should be using your note takers. I should see highlighters or pencils, right? Highlighters or pencils. So he was born in January of 1824. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? And he had a father whose name was Jonathan Jackson, and his mom was Julia Beckworth Neal. Now, his father got sick, and he passed away when Thomas Jackson was still really young. And it wasn't long after that that his mom passed away. Now, we may not have anybody in our class that has faced this, but we may have a friend or a cousin that has lost their parents. So we know that's a really tough life, right? Right? Mm-hmm. So when you don't have your parents, sometimes things happen that you have to keep moving forward, you have to keep trying, and that's kind of what happened to Thomas Jackson. So he had to grow up with family members. He grew up with his uncles. He didn't have a lot of opportunities, or he didn't have a lot of chances to get the education that we have now. Remember, it was a different life back then. And because it was a different life, they didn't have access or be able to get what we get today. And he was often bullied. Now, we talk about bullying before, right? We know, is it right or wrong to bully?
Wrong.
Wrong. Can it hurt somebody or help someone?
Hurt someone.
Hurt someone. That's what happened to Thomas Jackson. He was bullied because his parents didn't have a lot of money, his family didn't have a lot of money, and then keep in mind, he was what's called an orphan, which is where you do lose both parents. Very good, Colby. I seen you had that word on the tip of your tongue, didn't you? So it was a really hard life for him. But something interesting about Thomas Jackson is he didn't let that stop. Remember how we talk about being leaders? Yes.
No.
Yes. We have talked about being leaders, and that's exactly what Thomas Jackson did. He pushed himself, so even though he didn't have the early education, and that's talking about like how you're in 4th grade right now, even though he didn't have a lot of that, he still tried. And he ended up graduating 17th in his class at a military academy. And the number 17 is just referring to where he was in his class. So number 1 would be the top person in your class, and 100 would be the bottom person in your class. Now for us, does it really matter if you're first or last?
No.
What matters?
That you do good in school.
Do good in school, work hard. I love these answers. But because of his background, it's important for us to know that he was able to achieve that, just like we can, right?
Yes.
Yes. And not only did he graduate, he became a teacher. So just because you don't do so well In school, does that mean that you can change or you can't change? You can change. Thank you, Caitlin. You can. And that's exactly what Thomas Jackson did. He taught at Virginia Military Institute. And if you look on your Chromebooks or you can look up at the board, you can see a picture. This is the museum where he graduated from. And then on the left side, you can see the arrow pointing straight down above it. It's a sepia, which is almost similar to a black and white picture. It's just tan. You can see the school that he taught at. And the school that he went to is still open today, and you can go visit it. Now, it is several states away. It's all the way on the right side of the United States. Look at your Chromebooks and tell me what state it is.
Virginia.
Which one did you graduate from? New York. The state is New York. The state is New York. So Thomas Jackson became a Confederate general. Remember the word Confederate, that's a key term. Make sure you have your highlighters and pencils, guys. That's a key term, that's the South. And it was from 1861 to 1863. And because he was so strong and he pushed himself so hard, he became known, here's a good word you need to remember, Stonewall Jackson. Everybody say Stonewall Jackson.
Stonewall Jackson.
If you look at the PowerPoint, you'll see a brick wall behind his picture. And that is kind of a way that helps me remember that when I'm talking about Thomas Jackson, it is a stone wall. That's his background. That's what keeps him strong. And that's how he was able to fight in these battles. And he became known for that. The biggest battle that he got that nickname from was the Battle of Bull Run. Now, Stonewall Jackson defeated, what's the word defeated mean? Jameer, what's the word defeated mean? Say it one more time. Well, he may have lost, but I see where you're going with that, so I love that you shared that. When you hear the word defeated, that means he beat. He won, right? And Stonewall Jackson was pushing to take the war to the Union. Remember, when we hear Union, the UN, what are you going to do?
Up north.
Up north. Very good. Very, very good. So he was fighting to make sure the war went to the Union, or the North, up north, because he was trying to get an advantage, which means that he was pushing, he was being stonewalled so that he could win the war. So Stonewall Jackson had a surprise attack, and it was an hour away from Chancellorsville, Virginia. He had 30,000 men, y'all. That's a lot of people. Y'all think that's more people than we have in Cochran?
Yes.
A lot of people. A lot of people. So Stonewall Jackson did something they didn't think he could do. He drove the Union back 2 miles. Now, does 2 miles sound like a lot to y'all? No.
Yes.
I know.
When you're driving in a car, you can do it in a split second, right? It's pretty quick. But imagine being on foot and you're in the middle of this fight. And I know that y'all play video games. You know, when you have to battle somebody on a video game, you're gonna go forward, you might have to go back. You're gonna go forward, you might have to go back.
I don't do that.
Because you're trying to attack and then defend, right? Just like boxing, like Caitlin just did, right?
In my game, I don't defend. I just rush and I rush.
You just rush them?
Yes.
Well, that is what's known as a tactic. That's the way that you win, right? So what Thomas Jackson was doing was he was trying to push him. He wanted him to go, right? But what happened is Stonewall Jackson got shot by what's called friendly fire. Has anybody ever heard that term?
No.
Yeah. In game, you hear it.
Ryan, have you heard of friendly fire?
Yeah.
What's friendly fire?
That's when somebody shoots you on accident.
Very good and a perfect way of saying that. It's when somebody shoots you on accident and it's by somebody that you're friends with or an ally. Y'all remember that word at the beginning of our lesson?
You got
We got that prior knowledge.
They turned his arm off.
Yes, they did. Very good, Ryan. So his left arm was amputated at the battle by a doctor. And after he lost his arm, he still survived. And what his comrades or his buddies, the people he was in battle with, took his arm and buried it. They Christianed it, which means in their religion, remember we all have different religions, is that okay? They Christianed it, and then they buried it on the battlefield and marked it with a stone. And a lot of people believe that they've done this because they didn't want anybody else to get that arm, because they thought that because he was Stonewall, that they could take his power. So that's a little bit of a different idea, and I know we're not all gonna believe the same, right? Right? Right. But that's just what some of them believe. Now, we don't know for sure the exact reason why. We can look at first-hand accounts or second-hand accounts. We can look at second-hand accounts. Remember learning about that? And we can see the different ideas. Well, Stonewall Jackson went back home. Make sure you're using your clickers. Stonewall Jackson went back home and he got sick. And when he got sick, he passed away. But what happened was this affected the Confederate. Now, what was the Confederate? Was that North or South?
That's the
South.
South.
It's South.
North, South.
South. Very good. It is the South. It affected their confidence because remember, Stonewall Jackson was a pusher, right? Nobody could get through him. He was a stone wall. Nobody could get through to him. And so when he passed away, the belief that the Confederates had in themselves started crumbling, kind of think like a cookie, how it starts off strong once it cools off out of the oven, and then if you watch, sometimes that cookie will start crumbling, right? That cookie crumbles, and so that's what happened to the South. They started crumbling a little bit because somebody they believed in and somebody they thought could win the war for them passed away. So now, Thomas Jackson is buried at the Stonewall Jackson Memorial Cemetery in Lexington, Virginia. And you can see his statue on the PowerPoint. You can put your Chromebook or up in the front if you need to. And something that he has been quoted as saying was, "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of trees." What do y'all think that's telling us? Somebody I hadn't heard from. Destiny. What do you think that's telling us? Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of trees. Give them peace. Very, what, say that again, Caitlin? It's okay, be confident, loud and proud. Loud and proud.
You just said it.
I want to hear it from you, Caitlin. Will you share again, please?
Something about heaven. I don't know.
Be confident.
I know it.
Be confident. Let's let Caitlin have a chance.
Oh.
You want to whisper it to me? You want to share it with me later? We can do that. We can do that. So what it's saying is you're looking for peace. You're crossing over this river. You're crossing over life, and you're finally going to be able to rest, to sleep, and not have to worry anymore. And that's something that we can think about even in our lives, right? Not that he passed away, but what he stood for. And I'm not talking about the Union and the Confederate. I'm talking about how hard he pushed himself. And while you're in fourth grade, you can push yourself. It's going to go back to what we talked about as being leaders and making a difference. We can't let what people say about us affect us to where we're not being able to do our work or we feel alone, because we always have somebody. You have friends, you have your teachers, right?
Yeah.
You have your families. People believe in you and they love you. So what we're going to do now is there's some post-it notes on your table. I want everybody to get one post-it note. And on the sticky side, everybody say it with me, sticky side.
Sticky side.
Name.
Name.
Sticky side.
Sticky side.
Name.
Name.
Go ahead and do that for me.
Oh, what about this?
Go ahead and pass it up to me. Once you have your name on the back, you have two questions. You can see it on your Chromebook or you can look up at the board. The first question is, was Stonewall Jackson part of the Union or Confederate Army during the Civil War. You don't have to write the question, I just want the answer. I'm looking for one word on number one.
So what's the part of the Confederate or the South or the North?
What I want you to do is I want you to think about it, think about what we talked about, and I want you to try your best. This is not for a grade, it's just for me to see where you are, okay? Just try your best. If you look at the Chromebook, or you can look at the front, the first question is, was Stonewall Jackson part of the Union or Confederate Army during the Civil War? Just try your best. And remember, if we make a mistake on it, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, because when we make mistakes, we're learning, right?
Or the South.
Okay, remember, we're doing this on our own, independently. It's not for a grade. I just want to see what you know. So just try your best. Write number one. And then answer, was Stonewall Jackson part of the Union or Confederate Army during the Civil War? Once you already have number one, we're going to move on to number two. If you're still working on number one, it's okay. Number two is, why was he important in the Civil War? Why was he important in the Civil War? This is going to be a short response. You don't have to list everything. I want to know what stood out to you on why he was important. If you need me to read it again, just kind of look at me and wave and I'll read the question again for you. Once you have finished, come and place your post-it notes on the board. Make sure you do it quietly as people are still working. You guys should have plenty of time. You don't have to rush. Check-in. If you're still working, that's perfectly fine. You still have plenty of time, but just kind of raise your hand or look at me so I know that you're still working. If you have put your post-it note on the board while we're waiting on a few to finish up, make sure, go back over your note taker, make sure you fill in the blanks and highlight it. If you have questions, make sure you're putting that question mark, and you can actually write out your question if you want to, so that way you'll remember. So everybody should be doing something right. Alright, we're gonna come back together in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. So now we're gonna have an exciting activity that I mentioned at the very beginning of class. Now y'all know Miss Cole ain't perfect, but I'm supposed to be a referee today. Did anybody see it?
Yes.
Did y'all see it? Yes, I got my whistle today. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna play Battle of Bowling and Stonewall. So I need you to remember your social contract. I need all eyes up here because we have some rules we got to go over. And we're gonna talk about it before we do it, right?
Yes, ma'am. Because you're the teacher right now.
So what we're gonna do is you're gonna be divided into teams. And your teachers are picking your teammates. Okay? We're gonna pick your teammates. You're gonna come up with a team name. Make sure it is school appropriate. Everybody say school appropriate.
School appropriate.
Okay. What's an example of school appropriate?
That means like no bad words or no. It's like basically follow your social contract at all times.
Basically, is what you have on the social contract. Don't break it because that's not the right thing to do. And you'll be in the workroom forever.
Well, I don't know about forever, but you would get in trouble for it. But those are really good answers. We need to make sure that it has no bad language, that it doesn't have any kind of bullying in it. And if you don't want your teacher or your principals to hear it, then should that be your team name?
No.
No. So we're gonna line up with our teammates in 2 rows and we're going to go outside. And the reason we're gonna line up with our teammates in 2 rows is that way we can remember who's on our team. Okay?
I know mine.
Listen, please. Thank you. Remember your social contract. So we're gonna go outside, and has everybody played bowling before?
No.
If you haven't played bowling before, you're gonna take a ball and you're gonna roll it to plastic pins. Sorry, y'all. Pins. And how we're gonna do this is you're gonna be asked a question. You're gonna be asked verbally, and I'm gonna have a sign where it's gonna have the question on there. Your team has to be the first to raise their hand. Now, can you shout it out?
No, there'll be an unback out.
Yes. Thank you, Ryan. Very good. You're not gonna be able to answer the question if you don't raise your hand. So your team member must raise their hand first to answer the question. When you answer the question correctly, your team gets 2 points. When you roll the ball to knock the pins down, for every pin that you knock down, and I'll show you what they look like in case you haven't played before. Everybody see this? We got the jumbo one.
Is it heavy?
No, it's not heavy. For every pin, the white plastic ones here, that's knocked down with your ball, you get 1 point. The team with the most points at the end of the game gets to choose a prize. These are your 2 choices. Your team can either eat with your teacher at lunch, your whole team can eat with your teacher, or you can choose to do independent reading and we can go to the sensory garden, sit in the swings. Okay? Now, you gotta decide as a team, your whole team has to agree. Okay?
So, it's only supposed to be 2 people, like, in each team.
No, the team is we're only gonna have 2 teams. So there's 16, so there'll be 8 and 8 on each team. So all 8 will either get to eat with a teacher, or all 8 can go to the garden.
This is too easy.
Alright, does anybody have any questions about Battle of Bowling and Stonewall?
No.
And I want y'all to think about that. If we are rolling that ball and knocking them pins down,
It's like Stonewall.
it's like Stonewall. How is it?
Cause
You're on the right track.
Oh.
You're knocking the other ones down, right? So you're Stonewall. You're pushing forward. Think about science and gravity and that push and pull, right?
So is the A gonna be in it?
We're all gonna be referees.
I don't choose you. I choose
Alright.
you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for following your social contract. Are there any questions before we start dividing into teams about the game? Ryan?
It's like baseball, but like floating ball.
I like the comparison and we can contrast that. If you want to, we can talk about it later. Colby?
There's like a game show you have to press the button. Remember that?
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. You're saying that when we raise our hand, it's kind of like pressing a buzzer. That's a good comparison. Make sure these questions are about the game. Kaylee?
I kind of have something about the game and the Stonewall. Is like you have to be strong like Stonewall because if you want to knock all the pigs down, you have to be stone.
Okay,
You have to
I
be
like
hard.
that. I like that. Darquez?
What if there's two teams that have the same point that they're in the game?
Very good question. Y'all hear how Darquez asked a question about the game? He's asking what if the two teams have the same amount of points. What I'll do is I'll let y'all have a choice. We can either choose to do a tiebreaker, or if it's even and we run out of time, because we do have to come back and do some things before class is over, then we'll let both teams get to choose a prize on 2 different days. Okay? Do you have a question?
About Stonewall. Like what kind of arm do you have?
What kind of arm did he have?
Yeah.
Well, he had a regular arm until he lost it, but he never got anything to replace it.
Like a fake arm?
Like a prosthetic is what it's called. A prosthetic is a fake arm.
A robot arm.
Now, sometimes they might have used wood, like for a leg. I think about a pirate with a peg leg.
Yeah.
Some of them did that, but he never did. That's a very good question, though. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and divide into teams. So make sure you're listening. Okay? On team 1 is going to be Destiny, Jameer. Yes, you can go ahead and line up. Line up right here on this side, because we're going to do both teams, okay? So make sure you're paying attention. Okay, Marley. Go ahead, Marley.
Why you put it back?
Sophia. Remember, I want your respect. I give you respect, right? We have to respect each other. Alright, let's go ahead and start calling team 2 to make sure they're even. We're gonna have Caitlin. Kaylee. Zion. Michaela. Y'all, we are all friends in our classroom and we're gonna follow the social contract. Okay? Ryan, Christian.
Remember my
We'll be right here on team 2. Team 1, Colby. Jarquez. Alright guys, social contract. We might have to change our activity to a different game because remember we're gonna be respectful to each other, to our classroom, to our learning, to our teachers, and your teachers are gonna do the same thing for you, right? We call you. Hold on, let me finish doing the teams, okay? Gracie, team 1. Jasmira, team 1. Kyrie, team 2. Yes, you may. Thank you for offering that. Alright, now how are we gonna walk in the halls, guys?
Quietly.
Quietly. Y'all go ahead and double doors.